Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cooper Hernick podcast. Today, unfortunately, we are without my amazing co-host, Noah Gutman. He is unavailable due to campaigning, I believe. But he'll be back in future episodes, don't worry. We've got a jam-packed episode today. So we'll be discussing anti-Semitism and the upcoming Canadian election, the Trump administration and their shocking moves with the Iranians, and we'll go into a deep dive of the Canadian federal election and why it really matters and why the media is getting it wrong. And we'll also give you a sports update in terms of Jays, Leafs, and much more. Let's get into it. Our first segment is anti-Semitism and Canadian politics. So, first of all, let's talk about one of the dirtiest races in the Canadian election, the Yara Sachs, the Trudeau's token Jew, Yara Sachs, versus the proud representative of York Centre, Roman Baber, someone who I am a huge fan of, and he was my second place choice in the federal Conservative leadership campaign. This campaign in York Centre has been one of the dirtiest campaigns in the country. It's been a campaign full of political blood spilt all over the place. To kind of give it a more descriptive term, so I can. Sorry, it's just in the light. Does it look good? I think it does. This riding has been a ground zero for one of the ugliest political battles in Canadian history. Smear campaigns, nasty flyers, online attack ads, it's all coming out. And Roman Baber is under relentless fire. So if you guys have time, help him to campaign these last 2 days before the election, because he's fighting strong, fighting back against Yara Sachs and the Liberals. And why it matters that we support Roman Baber in York Centre. Because Jewish representation in Parliament is so important and could dramatically shift this race and the federal race overall. And it could impact the seat counts. And also, it's important that we have actual, true Jewish representation instead of Trudeau's token Jews, which that's what Yara Sachs is. It's so important that we have actual proud Jews, people who actually represent us, instead of Yara Sachs as a token. And another anti-Semitic threat in the election is what's known as the Vote Palestine platform that I've seen recently, which is a massive red flag to us as Canadian Jews. I see this as a huge having a huge impact on Canadian Jewry, and I think that this is going to be is incredibly harmful towards us as Canadians, as Canada's Jewish population. I believe the third or fourth largest Jewish population worldwide. This platform has openly endorsed candidates who are anti-Semitic and anti-Israel and take very, very harsh, harmful positions towards the Jewish community. Like, for example, a lot of them are against the police, further police funding to protect our community, who's been under threat of relentless hate crime post-October 7th. And it is essential that any candidate who's on that list, do not vote for that candidate if you care about Jewish safety. I believe in York Centre, as we were talking about, the NDP candidate is endorsed by their platform, I think. So it's so important. I know that there's a candidate in Don Valley North, the NDP candidate. She's like, her campaigns are actually very cringy. I like to watch them to laugh sometimes. But she's one of them. I don't remember her name, because she was doing like the like using the Toronto slang and stuff, so it was very cringy. And how do we counter stuff like the Vote Palestine platform? And how do we counter these radical voices? So what we do is we support our community, support people who are actually principled candidates like Roman Baber, like Melissa Lantzman, like Karen Stintz, who's the MP for my co-host, Noah, as we know. We also have Joe Tay, who's a really good candidate in Don Valley North. There's a good candidate in... this is also in Toronto St. Paul's. Forgetting his name, but he won the by-election. And also make sure to call out anti-Semitism publicly. Don't be afraid to mobilize within our democratic systems. counter all this anti-Semitism. It's been on the rise post-October 7th. My cheeks look really red, don't they? And you also have, in comparison, south of the border, the Trump administration versus all the pro-Palestinian groups. Trump and his allies are pushing back hard against these pro-Palestinian groups to combat anti-Semitism. But in comparison, our government doesn't care. Mark Carney wants to keep an arms embargo on the one and only Jewish state, which is extremely harmful to Canadian Jewry. And I think that anyone who supports Carney, any Jews who support Carney, I think that they can probably hand in their Jew card, if you ask me. Because Trump and his allies, in comparison, they've been pushing hard against all these groups and all the pro-Palestinian movements and pro-Hamas movements on U.S. campuses, like how how they're deporting Mahmoud Khalil, who should be deported. He should absolutely be deported. No questions asked. I don't know why there's even a case against him. I think that he should have been deported a long time ago. I don't know why there's even a case against it. You shouldn't even listen to the courts. I believe Syria is on that map. Sorry, I had hiccups. It's on the map behind me. It's an old one. That one I can find it. One way behind me. But next, how could a future Poilievre government in Canada follow the lead of how Trump has handled the pro-Palestinian groups? He could do this in many ways, by banning the foreign funding of these radical groups, which we've banned a lot of their funding, like Samadoun, which was mainly by Poilievre and Lanceman pushing the government to do that, but I know Pierre will do that. Also defund all the NGOs that support terrorism, the ones that are similar to like Samadoun and SJP and the Palestine Collective, all those ones. And also all these policies we should be talking about on a regular basis. We need to get our politicians to be on our side. Influence the politicians. I believe in our community. But next, let's talk about something that's really, really been frustrating to me. The Trump foreign policy towards Iran. Trump's new Iran deal push is, in my opinion, stupidity, or maybe even something worse like malice. I think it could be malice. Because reports say that the Trump team, or parts of it, want to negotiate a new version of the JCPOA, which was the Iran nuclear deal that the Obama administration signed in 2013, 2014, I believe. This absolute insanity of giving Iran sanctions relief empowers their terror proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis to be able to have a huge reign of terror by having even more funding by Iran because their sanctions are going to be removed. And we cannot trust the inspectors who are going to be inspecting the nuclear facilities, because Iran, they claim that they just have a civil nuclear program. It's civil. The IRGC is civil. Yeah, bullshit. My ass. Yeah, you can call my ass civil, but it creates shit. These inspectors can absolutely not be trusted. You cannot trust an Islamist regime led by the Ayatollah, a revolution that was started by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini with nuclear weapons. You cannot trust an Islamist regime with any nuclear weapons, civil or otherwise. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's what the Trump administration is doing. Iran doesn't want to have nuclear energy. They don't want to have clean energy like what we would do in the West with a nuclear reactor. What they want is nuclear weapons. Listen to what Iran is saying. They want the destruction of the Jewish state. Just because it has Hezbollah flag. The Houthi flag. Their flag literally says, "Curse upon the Jews, death to Israel, death to America." They want to destroy the little Satan first, Israel, and then they want to go for America. I don't understand why people see Iran as, there's a twin pillar. They're a totally peaceful state. No, they are not. You are fucking stupid if you think that Iran is going to play ball like usual. And this is what leads me to the next part of this. Trump has enabled a certain member of his administration, one of his golfing buddies, Steve Witkoff, who I see as an absolute idiot. Trump appointed his real estate golfing buddy as Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff. The problem with him being envoy is that he has absolutely no foreign policy experience. Maybe he's visited the Middle East a couple times, but he has a massive conflict of interest. He has ties to Qatar, the organization that hosts Hamas and a bunch of the other terrorist organizations from Iran in their country. They are hosting terrorists, and we are allowing this guy to have to be in charge of the American Middle East foreign policy. Steve Witkoff, are you kidding me? Trump trusts this guy, Steve Witkoff, to be in charge of Middle East foreign policy when he has massive ties to Qatar, because Qatar bailed him out on his shitty real estate investment in New York. So obviously, conflict of interest right there. He would obviously be owes the Qataris. So if they say, "Hey, can you help us out a little bit? Scratch our back since we scratched yours. So why don't you do something really big to help us and help the Iranians?" Because obviously Qatar is friends with everyone. They're allies with the Iranians. They pretend to play both sides. Maybe we should listen to the Saudis a little bit more. That's my opinion. The Saudis actually, they have almost no relation to Qatar because they're the evil stepchild. Qatar should not be trusted. I don't know why we are trusting Qatar. The Biden administration trusted them, but I don't know why the Trump administration is. I like Trump because he. Sorry, I was adjusting my light. Why is that? Sorry. Oh, there. That. Oh, there it is. What Qatar is they are a country that hosts the terrorist organizations like Hamas, and they try to play the role of Switzerland in the Middle East when they are not. What they are is they're a Wahhabi Islamist state that is a cutout for all of the worst actors in the Middle East. They play as a front group to get funding for all of them. They're the main funders of Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. Actually, they get all their funding from Iran because Iran can't actually give them funding, so they get it through. Why does my hand keep touching that? Keep touching the light. And how can someone who is so compromised, like Witkoff, be able to fairly represent U.S. interests in the Middle East when he has such conflict of interest with the Qataris? And the Trump team really needs to rethink their staffing choices if they want to be able to protect their allies like Israel. I know that Trump cares about Israel, but clearly, with his staffing choices like Witkoff, he doesn't give a shit. He just wants to have his golfing buddies with him. I think his administration is very good in terms of staffing. There's definitely some people who are definitely not the best, but I think that someone like Witkoff should be nowhere near foreign policy. I think that Rubio is a great guy to have in term as your Secretary of State. I like Rubio a lot, but Witkoff, you can put him in charge of maybe HUD. He knows how to build housing. Give him that. Put him housing and urban development. But let's get out of the Middle East and let's go back to our country of Canada. Let's do a little bit of an election deep dive. So, first of all, the debate. In Canada, we obviously have our French and English. We did French first and then English after because the Quebecicans deserve to have priority. And how do we measure the success of the Conservative Party of Canada? So, in the debate, Pierre delivered constant blows, staying on message about affordability and the housing crisis, and about the horrible 10 years we've had under the Trudeau-Carney regime. And in the debate, Mark Carney came off as like a puppet and very ignorant. he hasn't lived in the country. He was Trudeau's economic advisor, but he's been living in Europe. He's a European. He is not Canadian, not North American. If he loses, I'll put money on it right now. I think that he'll end up moving back to Europe because he'll probably be afraid that there will be an investigation against him to figure out where his money really is. Because I saw a thing yesterday that his money is likely in the Isle of Man, which is a tax, the way to hide your money. And let's get into some of the other candidates in the debate. Jagmeet Singh, I think he had some good points against Carney, but he really came off as an absolute child. And I think that what he was doing is he was really trying to fight for his political life. So he thought, oh, I'm not going to win any seats. There's nothing to risk. So why don't I just throw every shit at the fan? Keep throwing shit at the fan. Keep throwing as much shit right at the microphone. And just keep going ad hominem against all your opponents, especially Pierre. He didn't go as hard against Carney, but he's definitely went really, really hard to the against Pierre, who's interrupting him. I think he came off as a child. He looked like a 4-year-old. And Yves Francois Blanchet, I think that in the French debate, I think he definitely won. He stayed on message. I think he's a great politician. I would never vote for him because I am not a Quebexican. But I think he did pretty well. I hope he does well in Quebec, and hope he takes a lot of votes away from the Liberals. But I think Carney, he didn't have any really killer blows to really get at the Conservatives or any other parties. His softball question at the end of Pierre, that was the biggest meatball you could throw down the middle of the plate to, which we get into baseball later, to Pierre, asking about security clearance, which is the most bullshit question you could ever ask. I believe I have it in my script for later. We'll talk about security clearance. But I think that that was such a good question because Pierre had such a good answer to it. Now let's get into the polling analysis. Why the media is lying to you. A lot of mainstream polls like Nanos, Leger, Ipsos, I think they're definitely sampling urban areas, and they're sampling conservative areas, which it's very easy to do that because conservative voters are a lot less likely to answer a pollster, but urban liberals, they have so much time. They're working desk jobs, most of them. They have lots of time to do it. So I think a lot of the two pollsters that have been the most correct is Abacus Data, led by David Coletto, and Innovative Research. I think they are both really, really strong pollsters. I like how Innovative Research, how they do a breakdown of different types of voters, and how Abacus, they have a really good sample, and they poll their stuff really well. And I really like the way that Wyatt Claypool of the National Telegraph explains the polling really well. I've been watching his videos a lot, and I really like how he describes in the polls how there's been recently a shy Tory effect, which is very common, how conservatives are less likely to interact with polls, and they don't always want to admit their vote intentions, so it's really hard to poll them properly, which is why a lot of rural and suburban areas are severely undercounted. And also, young conservative voters are extremely undercounted. I have only answered one Canadian poll my entire life. I used to do polling on Reddit when I was younger, but it was definitely it was hard to do polling on there, but we'll get into that another time. I have answered one poll this election. It was actually Ecos Research, the most biased liberal pollster, reached out to me, and I did their IVR phone poll. And I thought that I could see why a lot of my generation doesn't vote, because why would someone in my generation want to waste their time listening to an auto bot? and that's why young conservatives are so underrepresented in polls. Because why would we want to waste our time with the traditional poll? We have other things to do. My generation playing video games or whatever, watching YouTube. So expect the polling there to be a real surprise on election night. Don't trust the numbers you see from CBC. Do not trust the results you hear until April the 29th, which would be the morning after. Don't trust it until then. Because as someone who will be participating in the counting process, all of the votes have to be hand counted. The ballot boxes cannot be opened until all the polls are closed at 9 o'clock. So you're not going to see accurate results until, at bare minimum, 12 p.m. midnight. And the variables to watch on election night are the advanced polling, which the numbers have been extremely high, record numbers. In my district, there's already over 30% voter turnout. I worked as a DRO at the advanced polls, which I probably shouldn't talk about too much. But I personally witnessed amazing voter turnout. Huge numbers in my community, from every diverse community, Gen Z to seniors. I saw people couldn't walk. I saw people who were young and looked like they were underage. I had to check their ID. I'm so proud of how people came, and if you didn't vote, I'm going to be honest with you, shame on you. If you didn't vote, you have absolutely no right to complain. But I'm so proud of everyone, how many people voted, took part in the early vote. I don't care who you voted for. Well, actually, I do. But I'm happy that everyone participated. And Gen Z, this is our fight. If you're under 30 and you didn't vote, you are giving up on your future. Housing is already unaffordable. If Carney stays in, the Carney-Trudeau liberal regime, home ownership for our generation is basically dead. You'll never be able to afford a home because you're fucking over yourself big time by not voting. We'll be stuck paying insanely high taxes, housing prices, and rents forever. So get out and vote and fight for your future. Fight. Get out there and vote. A lot of people say that the Conservatives need at least 6 to 8% popular vote. I think that number is definitely slipping. I don't think that we need 6 to 8% to win. I think that there's definitely a what's the word for it? A silent majority Conservative base. Look at how many voters Pierre gets at his rallies. Pierre gets huge numbers at his rallies, and I think that these numbers we can't just look down on. You have to incorporate that in. If Pierre is able to get 30,000 people at his rally, I know it was in Calgary. Calgary is Pierre's hometown. It's an oil town. 30,000 people. He had, I think it was 15,000 in Edmonton. He's getting constantly over 10,000 people at his rallies. That's insane. Have you ever seen that in Canada? I haven't. I've seen it in the U.S. Sure. I've seen Democratic and Republican rallies all the time with that amount of people. But I think having that in Canada is like downright impossible. I think that what we're likely to get on election night is probably a minority government, very likely. But the majority could happen if BC swings blue and if Ontario swings blue. And one of the things I really hope that happens in these next couple days is that Ford actually endorses Pierre. I know he actually won't, because Ford is an absolute coward and he should be so ashamed of himself. I know why he's doing this, though, because he's planning on, if the Conservatives win, mark my word, he will end up running for the Federal Conservative Party, and if he does that, I'm revoking my membership, and I ain't voting. I ain't voting for that man. And I hope and pray that he doesn't. I hope that the Ford family stays the absolute hell out of federal politics. But I know he wants to. He's aspirational. Him and his stupid brother. And the other race to watch is obviously the Ontario suburbs. So It doesn't matter where you are. Make sure you vote. If you haven't voted yet, shame on you, but you still have a chance. 9 to 9 on election day, or it might be earlier. You might be able to vote. It's kind of confusing with all the time changes. But make sure you vote. I think we can get 80% turnout if everyone votes. But if you don't vote, don't complain. But let's get out of the politics area. And before we do that, make sure to write your election predictions in the comments. Let's see if you're right. Let's see if you're wrong. Let's see if we can get a lot of views. Share this video with all your friends. Let's get into the sports segment. So the Blue Jays, they finally snapped their brutal 5-game losing streak with a strong win against the Yankees. And in good news, their bullpen looks very revived, being led by a very solid back end of the bullpen, led by Jeff Hoffman, Yumi Garcia, Chad Green, Mason Fluharty has been really good. But some of the negatives have been, the rotation has been kind of shaky. I expect it to be a lot better, but I'm not going to complain about the rotation. But the real negative is the offense has been extremely, extremely streaky. We need to find a more consistent offense because these last 10 games that we've had have really, really shown that the Blue Jays might be a pretender. Their first games show they're a contender, but these last games, they're pretenders. Let's see if they can flip that. What do you guys think that they're going to end up doing? I think that if Vladdy can show that his money is worth the money he was paid, and if Bo can step up, he's in contract year, so obviously wants to get paid, so he's going to want to play well. I think that Santander needs to step up. Everyone needs to step up. Step up to the plate, guys. And now, let's get into some hockey talk. I know we're going really fast, trying to get through all this. The Leafs are very close to advancing to the first round for the first time in years, I think since the early 2000s. They're currently up 3-0 against the Senators. Amazing. With all their stars stepping up. Matthews, Marner, Nylander, all producing hugely with a very strong defense and goaltending core, which is rare for the Leafs, but finally they are. And this might be a situation of cautious optimism for the Leafs. But we've all seen this movie before, and I wouldn't be surprised if they blow it. But they have a chokehold. They have a 3-0 lead. I think that they might move on to the second round, but you never know. Fat Lady hasn't sung yet. But thank you guys all for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys all staying here if you did. Make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, Noah will be back our next episode. And until then, good luck to the Leafs, Jays, and all of us voters out there. Make sure if you haven't voted yet to vote. Go to Elections Canada to find out where to vote. Make your vote count. Make your voices heard. Have a wonderful day, guys. Love you.